Hello and welcome back to the UKSIF Leadership Podcast and our very exciting 12 Days of UKSIF-mas series, where we are spending 12 days breaking down what we've been working on, big moves and big news in the sustainable finance sector. I'm Sally, and today I'm joined by Oscar for day 8, where we will be covering 8 consultation responses.
Hi, Sally.
So Oscar, sorry for interrupting you. But let's start at the top. What are the consultation responses that we've submitted this year, and what are the common themes?
We've submitted quite a few responses to policymakers this year. Maybe not as many as 2023, but I think that's because we had a new government come into play in 2024. And I guess whenever you've got a new government, that often leads to some kind of policy paralysis. So yeah, there's a little bit of a respite on the consultations perhaps for this year, but yeah, still loads that we were working on alongside our members. I think it might be easiest to kind of break this up by themes. I mean, SDR, of course, was a really big theme in terms of consultations. Yeah, there was one earlier the year, which was the FCA's guidance to support the implementation of their anti-greenwashing rule. And I think as part of this response, ourselves and other groups as well really gave quite a lot of mixed feedback on the guidance, despite welcoming its intention overall. I think there was a sense that with this guidance, it appeared to be a bit more prescriptive than what many of our members and ourselves had expected. And maybe even appeared to kind of be in conflict with the anti-greenwashing rule itself and existing expectations that are set out in existing source books from the FCA. The FCA, I think, recognised some of the feedback from the industry and groups like us. And I think they then kind of reflected on that and clarified that actually the guidance is really meant to be secondary to the rule itself and existing regulatory expectations. Yeah, I think that was really important to get that clarity there on the anti-greenwashing rule. And sorry, I probably should have said, that's a really key part of the SDR and investment labelling regime from the FCA. So that's really impacting all regulated financial services institutions in the UK. And that's really making sure that the sustainability related claims from a firm's products and services are clear, fair, and not misleading. Yeah, that's a kind of really important aspect of the SDR. There was another consultation that we responded to, which was around extending SDR to portfolio management services. Yeah, I think our take on that was that it was good to see the FCA propose fairly similar rules to those affecting fund managers, although there was a shorter window to comply with that. So actually, we then said there should be a consideration of the timeframes affecting portfolio management services and trying to putting that on a more level playing field with the timeframes affecting asset managers. And again, to their credit, I think the FCA took that feedback on board, and I think now we've seen a bit of a shift in the timeframes for portfolio management. So I think that's a good step that they took there. And I think, yeah, more fundamentally, I think it is good to see SDR now extending to that part of the market and hopefully giving retail investors and financial advisors as well the ability to compare products more easily in the market across these two areas. Yeah, I think definitely some good progress made on SDR consultations over the course of 2024. I guess, yeah, in terms of kind of another theme was the kind of wider sustainability agenda. There was a transition finance market review that was commissioned by the previous government, actually, and that was led by Vanessa Harvard-Williams, who's a kind of lawyer at Linklaters. And the transition finance market review is a really important piece of work, really looking at how they can scale up and grow the transition finance market in the UK. And the TFMR had a consultation that fed into its final report that we contributed to. And yeah, actually at the end of it, it was great to see quite a few investor and UKSIF recommendations feature in that final report from the review. And some of those recommendations were around getting much more clarity in the real economy and through measures like decarbonisation pathways for different sectors. So yeah, it was really good that the TFMR report reiterated the importance of that and getting those pathways set up through the reinstated Net Zero Council. But I think equally separately to some really positive measures on the real economy, some really good asks also incorporated around disclosure. There was a recommendation in the review around mandatory transition plans. And then separately to that, recommending a more principles-based approach to support institutions to develop their own transition finance investment framework. So yeah, avoiding that kind of prescription there, I think is really important. So yeah, I think that was another really big piece of work there with the TFMR. I guess the kind of wider financial services piece that we fed into over the year was the pensions investment review. I think pensions is being kind of increasingly talked a lot about by policymakers at the moment, and yeah, we used a lot of our kind of response to warn against this shift towards mandation of pension scheme capital towards UK assets. And investments, and I think it is a fear I think that we still have alongside alongside I should say some of our members. And I think, yeah, instead, we really want to encourage policymakers to consider, I guess, the kind of wider systemic barriers that are affecting, pension funds and other investors looking to put capital to work in projects and things in the UK. So, yeah, I think that's a kind of a continued conversation I think we still need to have with the government. And yeah, I think a lot more to pick up with policymakers in the second stage of the pensions review, which will yeah, I think be kicked off in the spring of next year. On broader climate policy, I guess that's a third theme, following on from talking about consultations on SDR and sustainability policy. Climate policy, I think we did more work in terms of responses to governments and regulators. So yeah, there was a really important consultation that came out pretty early on, I think, in the initial days of the new Labour government, and that was around proposals to reform the planning system in England, which has been really seen as a key blocker of private sector capital getting into the wider economy. And I think essentially we voiced quite strong support here for many of the proposals in the planning consultation, and that was specifically around changes to the national planning policy framework for England. And yeah, some really good proposals there, including new expectations on local authorities to identify sites for low carbon developments, which should help alleviate blockages in local planning authorities granting permission for projects. So yeah, that was a really good piece of work that I think is now underway by the new government. Although I don't think there was much there in that MPPF consultation around resourcing of planning bodies at the local level. And I think resourcing is an issue we're going to want to come back to for sure to make sure that that permission is being granted for major and strategic projects that can add a lot of value to the UK economy. So I think, yeah, resourcing at that local level when it comes to planning is yeah, still really important. And I think closely linked to that, there was also a green paper published towards the end of this year on the government's new industrial strategy. And it's something that lots of groups like ourselves and more mainstream business groups like CPI and Make UK have called for some time. A kind of proper fit for purpose industrial strategy that recognises a more interventionist, proactive role for the state, and playing that, I guess, that more kind of strategic role in certain sectors of the economy where more policy clarity is required. So yeah, I think that's an area that we'll hope to see clarity on in the spring of next year. And in our response, we talked a lot, yes, again, about sector pathways, clear decarbonisation pathways for sectors. That's a kind of common theme across a lot of our responses this year, and also calling for more clarity on the public policy frameworks for green hydrogen, CCUS, and other areas of clean energy as well. So yeah, lots. I think more to expect from that strategy in due course. And yeah, I really hope we helped. We'll really hope to shape the influence of that into next year. And then yeah, there were kind of a few other things that we responded to. So some kind of select committee inquiries on modern day slavery, for example, and a few other things as well. So yeah, still a fairly busy agenda, but just yeah, certainly less compared to 2023. I think it's fair to say.
Brilliant, thank you, Oscar. It's of course not a surprise that SDR and the anti-greenwashing rule was a big theme. If listeners actually missed our overview on that, they can go back and listen to day 4 of 12 Days of UKSIF-mas, where we covered the 4 SDR fund labels. But it is really interesting to hear about the transition finance marketing review and the pensions investment review and much more. It definitely keeps you busy. But if we sort of go back to basics, how do you go about producing these consultation responses?
Yeah, thanks, Sally. It's a good question. So yeah, I mean, member consultation is super important. It's really kind of the heart of everything that we do at UKSIF, and making sure that we are carefully consulting our members, and I should say, our growing membership network as part of that as well. So yeah, the policy committee at UKSIF is fundamental to that. So that's our main senior member forum that advises us on our public policy work in the UK. But yeah, separate to the policy committee, there's loads of other kind of wider members that we consult. So that's through bilateral conversations that the team has with members, but also through a series of roundtables as well. And I know, Salah, we've got heaps of roundtables planned for the new year on things like the stewardship code and other things as well. So yeah, there are always lots of opportunities to kind of feed into what we're doing. And yeah, do feel free to reach out to the UKSIF team if you do want to hear a bit more about our policy work and particularly our consultation responses. I think yeah, separately to consulting members, I think there's a lot of coordination that we'll do with other groups as well. So that's kind of like-minded investor groups that will kind of look to work with really closely and align our messaging when it comes to consultations where possible. And I think acting in concert and having that kind of more that collective voice, I think gives more kind of credibility and a kind of bit more kind of power to kind of what we're saying to government. So yeah, if they can see that it's not just kind of one group like us, but it's many different groups saying broadly similar things, I think that sends a really powerful signal to the policymaker community. So yeah, lots of close engagement that we do with groups like IGCC, PRI, and then equally some of the more kind of mainstream business groups like the CBI as well. So yeah, really important to keep speaking to others in the industry as well.
That's really helpful. And we've referenced next year quite a few times already, but what consultations are coming down the pipeline?
Yeah, so yeah, quite a lot of consultations coming down the track, which is great, obviously. So, well, what I should say at first is that we do have a consultation tracker for our members. So if you haven't seen that, do please reach out to the team. But essentially,
I
that
can
notes
put it in the I'll put it in the description for this episode as well.
great stuff. That's a good plug there. Thank you. But yeah, that basically notes all the kind of live responses we have planned, but also gives a sense of kind of what's coming down the track as well. So we have a note on kind of expected consultations with provisional timeframes there as well. I guess yeah, a lot of these consultations were confirmed by the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rachel Reeves, at the recent Mansion House. So yeah, in terms of kind of what we know from that. There was a consultation announced on the value case for green taxonomy. That's one. And then some others included a consultation on the technical legislation on ESG ratings. The stewardship code is another one as well, albeit I think we knew about that separately to the Mansion House package. And then I guess, yeah, there's the financial services competitiveness strategy as well. So I think that closes yeah, pretty soon. And yeah, I think that's got the tightest time frame on all of them. But yeah, policymakers have been a bit kinder on the other three I mentioned in terms of time frames for stakeholders to respond. And yeah, I would certainly encourage any of our members who do have an interest in this to have your voice heard and to respond, because I think is a really important way to have your kind of perspectives reflected in policy making. In terms of kind of other consultations that were confirmed at Mansion House, but haven't actually been published as yet. It was more a case of commitments for these ones. I think there's one that we're expecting on climate transition plans. That was one flagged in Mansion House. ISSB adoption as well. That was a second one, and then I think separately to that, I think there will be something around ESG ratings, and that will be from the FCA. So yeah, you've got to kind of have the technical legislation passed in Parliament, which will basically bring ESG ratings providers into the regulatory perimeter of the FCA. And then after that, FCA will basically have the rulemaking powers to set out its detailed policy approach for ESG ratings regulation. So yeah, that's another one to note there. And I guess yeah, there will also be others I guess that we haven't talked about that might come up on the horizon. So yeah, I'd say to kind of expect the unexpected in this kind of always evolving and always fast moving policy landscape in the UK. So yeah, I wouldn't rule out kind of others popping up at some point over the course of next year.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Oscar, for joining me. It definitely sounds like it's going to be another busy year for you and for UKSIF next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have this conversation, and yeah, lots to look forward to into next year.
Thank you to our listeners for joining us on the 8th day of UKSIF-mas, and don't forget to tune in tomorrow for day 9. Remember to like and subscribe to be the first to hear our episodes.